My name is Simeen Mahmud, and I work in Bangladesh in the Brac University. This is the story of my journey with the DRC and how it has made a change in the way I do research and in the way I think about research. This is the Bangladesh Institute of Development Studies where I work, and staffed mainly by economists, some sociologists, and a few demographers like myself. I myself have very much a quantitative orientation, and I would like to tell you the story about how engaging with the DRC has brought about a change in the way I think about research, and how this may have had some effect on how BIDS as an organization works. Before I was involved with the DRC, the way we did research in BIDS was very much the traditional types of research where you go in with a hypothesis and you want to collect information either to support the hypothesis or to reject it. So everything was very much in black and white findings and results. And we would present our information, using tables and percentages and graphs, which would be okay for policymakers and other academics and researchers, but not very useful in terms of communicating with people who did not understand these conventional methods. So that was a big challenge at that time. So in order to sort of tackle some of these challenges, we had to think of some strategies, and the first thing we did was to include people from other disciplines. We also had younger colleagues coming in who were not so much set in their ways of thinking and doing, to work in more qualitative with more qualitative methods like Lopita here.
Well, when I first joined BIDS, I realized that they work mostly with numbers, and the thing with numbers is that not everybody can understand them, or nor can they explain everything or about why something's happened and how something's happened. So I think our partnership in terms of that, my bringing in my qualitative experience along with Simeen Napa's quantitative, it gave it made the output much more accessible and much more real to people who it mattered to.
We found that the types of outputs that we usually have, the research reports, articles, seminars, workshops, are not able to actually reach the research findings to the people with whom we have actually worked. And so we started to think about doing a video. And that was really a very significant change for both myself as a researcher and in my organization, where nothing like this had been tried before. And in making the video, we actually brought together all sorts of different stakeholders, from garment workers to employers to trade unionists to labor department officials, and they all have now started thinking in different ways about how to tackle the same problem. Professionally, I was originally trained as a demographer, statistics and demography. So you can see I've moved a long way. I'm also working a lot on, I used to work a lot on women in the labor market. I still do a bit of work, also work on women and microcredit and how that affects their lives. I work a lot on health, and more recently I'm working a lot on citizenship. And I feel that there's a lot of link between the process of becoming a citizen, process of strengthening your citizenship, and the process of empowerment. I think there are many sort of strong links there. And at one point we want to make that link too, but not right now. In the Pathways sort of South Asia hub, I came into it because I think I sort of worked with many of these people before, and we sort of thought we might form a good team, working team together. And also, although we hadn't worked together professionally, we've known one another for a long time as friends. Um, and we find that actually it turned out to be quite a good team, and it's quite a good combination. Yes.
Yeah.
So Maheen is been the coordinator, so she has a different type of background, and Firdaus has been an academician for all her life, and my background is basically as a researcher. So we bring sort of different strengths and also our weaknesses too.
Sure.
But I think we've managed to bring together build a good team. And initially I was involved in this whole business of bodily integrity, and I didn't fit very well in there. And that was because I had worked a lot on health, and people thought I might be fit. That might be a good fit for me, but I didn't. I wasn't. But then, so in the second phase, when we had these separate sort of streams of research, I chose work because I think that's where I have a lot of experience in working, and also I have a very sort of weakness for numbers, and that's why both Nala and I, we have a weakness for numbers, and we pushed for this survey. It was a bit of a struggle because I mean in the pathways, this is I think one of the few rare countries themes which are actually going for a big survey. We are looking at because we know that all types of work may not be empowering, and different types of work may be empowering in different ways. Like a public sector job is empowering in different way than a job of a woman who's working in the garment factory. So that's why we want to look at a whole range of work that women are doing in Bangladesh at the moment, and trying to trace the empowering process through that work. And it's not. I think we'll find that all work is not empowering. When we can actually find indicators for empowerment, and we'll also find that the whole process of change has lots of cost benefits and trade-offs that women have to face and decisions that they have to make, which again may turn out to be sometimes in the short run disempowering, but maybe in the long run it could turn out to be empowering. For example, women have to make decisions about working very long hours, and it takes a toll on their health. But then the fact that they are actually making an income, an independent income, has another sort of effect which may sort of compensate for the immediate. So it's sort of not very straightforward, the link between empowerment and work. Right now we are looking at 3 different areas for our research, as everybody knows, and work is one of the areas where I'm involved in. In terms of looking at work which is empowering, we are actually conducting quite a big survey and looking at about maybe 5,000 women. And part of this, the funding for that is actually being provided by Brac, because the research funds that we have from the RPC is not sufficient. And the census is going on, and we're looking at the survey, and we're looking at different types of work that women in Bangladesh do, and see a whole lot of aspects, but basically to see what aspects of that work leads to some form of empowerment. We're not yet sure, what the empowerment, what we're actually looking for at the end. We're also in the process of trying to identify and try to concretize what we mean by empowerment in the context of Bangladesh, and maybe also in the context of work in Bangladesh.
Okay.
We are going to be asking a whole lot of questions, like household, of the basic characteristics, household and other. But we're also asking questions on the work history, how they came into work, who made the decisions. We're also asking questions on the conditions of work. And also conditions of work, not only the physical working conditions, but also what opportunities it has provided them for mobilizing, for being organized. And we're also looking at sort of outcomes in terms of what has happened to the woman in terms of her income, in terms of health, nutrition, education of children. Things like that.
Okay.
So it's quite a broad base, but we're also looking at different types of work that, starting from work in the public sector, very formal, down to migrant workers who come in temporarily, maybe even sex workers. So trying to see a whole range of work that women are doing, and then seeing what sort of empowering effect it might have on their lives. We have seen that over the last decade and 15 years, the labor force participation of women in Bangladesh has increased from around 8% in the mid 1980s to now about 33%. So it's clearly a steady rise in female labor force participation in a country where traditionally women's workforce participation has been pretty low. So this is an achievement. The trend has been a slow and steady rise in female labor force participation. So in terms of policy, I think if we want to see women participating in greater numbers in the labor market, and we certainly do, because education levels are rising and aspirations are rising, families want to have their children educated, they want better health, aspirations are rising, so women need to be able to earn income. But government policies and private sector policies need to support that, and one way of supporting is really to provide some sort of support in terms of the care responsibilities. So that is an important policy area that I think both private sector and government need to work on. The other is actually giving, women work often in isolation, and what women need is really networking and associations, and that increases their bargaining power, particularly for women doing home-based work in the house, through which is sometimes called self-employed, which is again a rise we see. And there I think it's the need for associations would be to be able to raise women's bargaining power with agents through which they actually get the work. So I think these are two areas in terms of policy where I feel that a lot can be achieved to support women's labor force participation. What we have been doing is now actually trying to sort of gather our thoughts and winding up in certain ways. And one of the things we did was to synthesize the research that we've been doing for over the last 2.5-3 years, looking at the effect of development NGOs working at the grassroots level, and to what extent are they actually contributing to the process of deepening democracy. And in order to do that, we've looked at the mobilization strategies of these organizations, because they vary quite a lot. On the one extreme, you have the very minimalist microfinance organizations, and on the other extreme, you have the more broader social mobilization organizations. And in between, you have a combination of both social mobilization and microfinance or other services. So we have a range of organizations, and we'll want to look at the different strategies of organizations in mobilizing people at the grassroots, and to what extent they're actually producing citizenship practices, new types of practices, if any. And we find that, not unexpectedly, that the social mobilization organizations perform better on the citizenship or democratic types of outcomes, but they also do perform quite well on the developmental outcomes. Since I am sort of a bit biased about women's issues and women's problems, I think in order for women, so far women have been playing a very active role in the achievements of Bangladesh in the terms of human development and also economic growth, but not acknowledged as such and not seen as very visible contributors. So that therefore their constraints and the costs that they face to do that have not been sufficiently addressed. And I would say that the one thing that would need is to really provide support, institutional support and other types of support, so that women have a favorable, violence-free, safe environment in which they can actually contribute even more. The way that research has supported inclusive and sustainable development in Bangladesh is actually through long-term partnerships, which have developed, over several years. So, because increasingly the context is becoming more complex, and we've sort of gone over the first round of problem solving, but the second round of problem solving is going to be more complex, and I think that is why you need a more long-term research, more multidisciplinary research to understand that problem and come up with lessons that will actually be able to inform policy. With this round of the ESRC DFID funding, we are trying to look at the gender norms and gender dynamics in the labor market in Bangladesh, because our earlier research showed us that gender norms are very important in women's decisions, in households' decisions about whether women will actually supply labor to the market or not. So we had these questions, and I think for this round of ESRC DFID, 2 grants that I'm involved in, we're actually trying to pursue that question further in order to understand why labor force participation rates of women are actually so low in Bangladesh. Given the fact that paid work is supposed to be very empowering and give women a lot of decision-making power, but still, why are women not participating?